A captain is only as good as his team. However, in this case, questions arise to why this particular captain doesn't seem to match the caliber of his team. I am not making the comments. Well, that's what media reports suggest. Why is there so much criticism surrounding him and his captaincy? Did he get the captaincy because of reservations? Well, in the South African setup, it's compulsory to have 6 black players. Is this the crux of the matter? Or is there something more? I was reading a Cricket Info article a few days back and it stated that Bavuma was not appointed as captain solely because of his race. Rather, he stepped up to lead the struggling South African cricket team during a time when leadership was desperately needed. He was there to do whatever he could do within his limits. So why is this guy under the radar now? Before going into the history of reservations, let's quickly run through his World Cup performances. Well, some scores are just a little higher than our pin code numbers. It doesn't seem like he did justice with the bat. As an opening batsman, an average of just 18 in 8 matches, especially with a 0 against Australia in the semi-finals, adding salt to his injured form. So is he really that bad, or is there just a campaign against him to force him out? When it comes to the T20 World Cup last year, his presence was there, but the contributions were minor. Just 70 runs in 5 matches and that's it. So is he just a quota player, as some suggest? Let's know the history behind the racial segregation in the South African cricket first. So apartheid was a policy of institutionalized racial segregation and discrimination that existed in South Africa from 1940 to early 1990s, and by which during this time cricket in South Africa was divided along racial lines, with separate teams and competitions from white and non-white players. The isolation of South African cricket led to international criticism as well. The situation started to change in the late 1980s when the apartheid system began to crumble. South African team was welcomed back into the international cricketing community in the early 1990s, with their readmission coinciding with the end of the apartheid. And then for the first time after their readmission, India became the first team to tour South Africa in a series named the Friendship Tour in 1992. And then there's a submission of racial quotas in 2007, which dictates that South African team must now maintain an average of at least 6 non-white players in a season matches, including 2 black Africans. And which amidst all the hustle and bustle in 2021, Temba Bavuma became the first black African to captain South Africa. And after that, the only talk of the town is his batting performances and his captaincy records. But you know what, when Quinton de Kock took the stride as a captain, he also saw a bump in his career. And also South African team performance saw a slight bump. Just 27% winning rate in 11 matches, just won 3 games. This is also not a good stats as well. And not only Quinton, Henry Klaasen came as a captain and went. As a cricket fan, what we can observe from the outside is, it looks like there's no bit of stability in South African cricket as far as the captains are concerned. Because what we've seen in South African cricket in past 10 years is like a constant turnover of captains as they desire to get the right results. It's a fact that criticism only comes when you're failing. It's an undeniable truth that critics often seek a scapegoat. So Temba is no exception here. He was struggling in the World Cups with a bat, making him the perfect enough for critics. Understand the situation first. In the dynamics of any team game, there are typically 3 and 4 match winners who are capable of steering the game in their team's favor. So South African team is no exception in this. When Proteas entered the World Cup, they had those key players in Quinton de Kock, Aiden Markham and David Miller. And they performed decently well. Markham played a nice inning against Pakistan and Miller made a century against Australia in semi-finals. But one reality is there that not every single player can contribute in every single game. Quinton de Kock especially had an exceptional World Cup with a bat. 7 matches, 545 runs, 78 average. However, the letdown occurred in the semi-finals when his performance fell short, precisely at a moment when it was crucially needed. Talking about Temba, he played 8 out of 9 matches as a captain, winning 7 of them. Just 2 losses against Netherlands and India. Yes, he wasn't contributing with the bat. I hope it wasn't a crime. Because in media, this is what it looks like. As a fan watching in front of the TV, we can't assess whether he's playing his part or not. And I'm not taking his side, but as a cricket fan, creating a scapegoat is wrong. Everyone deserves an equal playing field. And not only this year, last year when they lost to Netherlands in a must-win T20 World Cup game in Australia, no one pushed at the players, but the radar was on Bavuma. And by then, numerous reports compared Temba's performances with the other South African domestic players, which I believe is unnecessary. It's also the fact that just before coming to the World Cup, he had a fantastic stint as a batter and captain against Australia, winning the series 3-2, which makes us clear that as a batter and international captain, he's not that bad. Okay, now just let's decode what happened with him. Well, one thing which everyone criticizes is that he made the South African unit confused about his injury. Maybe he's a selfless player. Maybe that's what he thought. It doesn't mean that you let your injury aggravate, right? And choosing to sit out may be viewed that you're showing your weakness, and that double thinking might have gone against Temba. It could be possible. As a captain, it's important to acknowledge the potential benefits of a player that they have in their team. From Reza Hendricks to Gerald Godse, they got the team that they want. Reza Hendricks scoring 85 runs against England, to Gerald Godse, who almost got the game for his team with his bowling performance against Australians in the semis. So when it comes to his captaincy actions, especially team selections in the bowling unit, from the Brace Hamsi selection to Gerald Godse, each and every time we saw how South African unit were panicking in their selections, especially in their last 3 games against India, Afghanistan, and then semis against Australia. Well, it always sad to see a team with so much talent playing promising cricket every time, but ultimately losing nerves in the crunch matches. And in the end, if you just analyze South Africa's failure in World Cup, it wasn't just Temba's fault. He can only be as good as his team. And the truth is, South African team disappointed their 6 crore people watching back home in South Africa. Thank you for watching.